Welcome to the show Things You Should Know About by Now. I'm your host, Rania Sultan. Today's video is to tell you that you have been lied to. Yes, you have been lied to by sources that we considered credible for so long, until lately we discovered they are sheer liars. That's why I dedicate this video to debunk these lies so you know the truth. I'll start with the big news network CNN that faked a scene that they have been attacked. Yes, they by mistake aired a video. They were live, but they didn't know they were live. The camera was rolling. They thought they are just recording. They were live. In this video, I'm going to roll it for you. You will hear the voice of the producer give instructions to the journalists to act as if they are attacked, to act as if they are horrified and terrified. And you will hear his voice give instructions to the volume controller to raise the volume of the explosions as if these explosions are very close and they are on the line. Let's take a listen here.
Yeah, we're getting video through now, Jerry. Now you can see the area is completely deserted, but I want you to get them off the road and get them laid down next to the road, okay? Closer to the road, Jerry. Move them. It looks like you're in the middle of a forest.
Get down. Close.
Okay, Jerry, tell the cameraman to keep Clarissa in shot, okay? It's not the Blair Witch Project.
You're fine.
That's it, perfect.
Okay.
Get nice and close. Get the cameraman nice and close.
That's the Iron Dome, okay? That's the
Now
Iron
look
Dome.
around, Jerry. Just look around as if you're in danger. Try and look nice and scared. Yeah, that's it, catching your breath. Dead scary over here with all the bombs going off and all that.
Guys,
Okay, that's beautiful. That's the money shot. Nice and tight on Clarissa.
are you seeing our situation, guys?
Tell her yes.
Yes.
Can she hear the shells, Jerry? Because they are about 6 miles away.
Can you hear the shell?
Stay down.
Derek, can you boost the volume on those explosions, please?
We have to stay here. Have to stay here.
Oh, and be a darling and patch me through to Clarissa's microphone,
Guys,
please.
come to us.
Clarissa, I need you to stop swearing. You're overdoing it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Now we're getting set up on sound and visual. We should be going live in about 15 seconds. Okay.
Were you guys rolling on this?
Yeah, we're rolling, Clarissa, but we're not live yet. Okay. We can't show the earlier bit because we want people to think you're in danger.
Since when did news network hire journalists to act as actors and actresses? I thought that they hired journalists, correspondents, reporters to be your eyes and ears in the field. But unfortunately, these days, things are done completely different. Exactly like the lies that have been perpetuated about the 40 babies that have been beheaded. This news piece of information was never verified, not a single clip of video, not a single photo to show that. But the media ran with it for days. Even the American president, Joe Biden, came to the podium to talk to the public and to the press. And he almost cried, claiming that he just saw the photos of beheaded babies. Few days later, the White House retracted what he said because it was completely unverified. Another person that I used to respect, but he lost my respect lately, is Ben Shapiro. This man from Daily Wire. I used to follow him and listen to his perspectives about different issues because I thought he has credibility. But lately, he lost my respect because he has no credibility. I was flabbergasted by the amount of lies that comes out from his mouth. Every single sentence is a lie. And you don't need to do deep research to find out about his lies. Just simple search on Google will show you the lies. Ironically, he made the series called it Facts, where he claims to debunk some myth. Unfortunately, he debunks facts by lies. And that's why in this video, I'm gonna debunk his lies, refute what he said because they don't make any sense. Let's start with myth number 1.
Myth number 1. Israel is historically Muslim territory. This is a pure and absolute lie. Israel is historically Jewish territory.
So Ben Shapiro claims that the land of Palestine belongs to the Jewish community because the land of Israel was founded 1400 BC. Well, history didn't start at 1400 BC. History started centuries before that. And according to the maps, this piece of land was under the ancient Egyptian kingdom rule for centuries. And then after the Exodus and Joshua entered the Holy Land, the land of Israel was founded. Then there was a division of two kingdoms. King David was in the north, Judea was in the south, and he took Jerusalem as his capital. Then after that, the Assyrian took over, and when they were defeated by the Babylons, the Egyptian took over, and then the Babylons took over until the Persian Empire became in power and they took over. Then Alexander the Great came and he conquered all these kingdoms until he died at the age of 32 in Babylon. After his death, Ptolemaic took over this piece of land. Then they were conquered by the Seleucid Empire for some centuries. Fast forward, the Roman came in power and they were in control of this land until Jesus Christ was born. Then Christianity became the main religion in the Holy Land. Then in year 632 AD, Prophet Muhammad was born in Mecca, and after that, the Muslim empires were founded. And Palestine became under the control of the Arab empires and then the Muslim empires since the 7th century till today. So your claim that a certain group should take possession of a land because they existed on this land in the far, far history is not an argument to start with. Because if we look at history, empires comes and goes and they possess different lands. If we go by history, then this piece of land should be under the ancient Egyptians since they were there way before Judaism was born. And if we take this line of argument, that means that European countries should give back the land to the Romans or Italian today because they once existed and ruled their lands. Perhaps France should give their land to Greeks because they once ruled them in history. So the fact here is Arabs were in control of this land since the 7th century till 1948. And yes, like you said, Jewish never ceased to exist on this piece of land, like they never ceased to exist in Europe. They never ceased to exist in the United States. Does that mean that they claim possession of the land because they once existed at some point in history? Then he was completely misinformed when he said,
Islam, which is the religion of the Palestinian Arabs.
Islam is not the only religion for Palestinian Arabs. There are Christian Palestinian Arabs and there are Jewish Palestinian Arabs. And the evidence is here.
I'm a Palestinian. From 21 until 48, I carried a Palestinian passport. There was no such thing in this area as Jews and Arabs and Palestinians.
For those who do not know, this woman is Golda Meir, the mother and founder of the State of Israel.
By the late Ottoman Empire, Palestinians living here were overwhelmingly Muslim, with minority Christian and Jewish native populations too. But regardless of religion, Palestinians were often referred to as Arabs, people of the Arabic-speaking world.
Let's go to myth number 2.
Myth number 2. Israel is the cause of the failure of land partition in the Middle East. This is, again, a pure lie. In 1917, the British promised the Jews the entire area of Palestine.
The lie is just what you said. In 1917, the British promised the Jews a piece of land in Palestine. They didn't possess this land to begin with in order to promise it to someone else. And with a simple search on Google, you'll find that the British government later confirmed that the words in Palestine meant that the Jewish national home was not intended to cover all of Palestine, unlike what you just claimed. So after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, this part of the Middle East was divided between the French and the British. Palestine came under the British mandate, where they promised a land that they didn't possess to begin with. So what that basically means is that the Jewish settlers would come and push away Palestinians, the main owner of the land. They will push them out of their houses, out of their lands, out of their farms to take over. And here's the evidence.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it, ya ammi. Jacob, you know this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? What are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
But
it's easy to yell at me, but I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house.
Like you just saw in the video, this man stole the entire house of this lady and her land. I bet you if you were in her place or someone stole just your wallet or your car, you will be outraged. But for Palestinians, whose land, livestock, houses, everything is stolen from them, they should be cool about it because it's your God-given right. No, it is not. In 1947, the United Nations partitioned Palestine into two states, Arab and Jewish, while gave Jerusalem a special status under an international zone. Partitioning basically gave Arabs, the indigenous population who comprised 2/3 of the population back then, 44% of the land, while the Jewish settlers who comprised 1/3 of the population got 56% of the land.
The plan shocked Palestinians.
We could not accept the partition plan because at that time the population were almost 2-to-1.
But the plan proposed giving over half the land and often the most fertile areas to the Jewish state. That wasn't the only problem with the plan. Within this proposed area of the Jewish state were hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs, including both Muslims and Christians, who had lived there for generations.
On a moral level, the idea of making hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs minorities in their own homeland seemed unjust and unfair.
Then tension escalated in the area, which pushed Britain to end its mandate on the region and to leave the situation under the United Nations to handle. In 1948, the Jewish settlers announced their Israeli state and expelled 700,000 Palestinians from their homes and their lands that they owned for generations since the 7th century. I want to remind you that back then the Palestinian population was 900,000. So 700,000 out of the 900,000 were expelled out of their houses and land. In 1967, and because of the expansionism nature and aspiration of the Israeli state, they annexed Sinai from their neighbor Egypt. It's a piece of land that is 3 times the size of Palestine. They also took West Bank from Jordan and Golan Heights from Syria. So they invaded 3 countries, 3 neighboring states, and took their land. In 1973, the Arab people launched war against the Israeli state to simply take back their land. Egyptians were successful to take back Sinai, which is almost 3 times the size of Palestine. They were successful. But see how Ben Shapiro recounted what happened in 1973?
In 1973, the Arabs launched all-out war again, this time on Yom Kippur. Israel survived and gained territory.
Obviously, his version of the story is completely different from what other historians, documentaries say about this 1973 war.
A surprise attack on the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur.
They put Israel under great pressure. Israel responded. It was a pretty close thing, actually. And they ended up back where they started from. But it had shocked the Israelis. The 73 war showed the Israelis really how vulnerable they were, and it changed their thinking.
In 1973, the Egyptian army proved that it was capable of military success and military victory.
מה שקרה במלחמת יום הכיפורים, שהתפקוד הלקוי שלנו ביום הכיפורים, שאנחנו עד היום לא מודים ולא מבינים, הם מבינים אותו. והם מבינים שישראל זה לא איזה מין נמר צבאי, וצה"ל הוא לא צבא יוצא מן הכלל, ואפשר את הצבא הזה להפתיע, ואפשר את הצבא הזה להכריע.
The surrender of Fort Mazach finally destroyed the myth of the supposedly impregnable Bar-Lev line. These almost medieval forts, which had cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build, had proved useless as Israel's first line of defense.
So because Egyptians were victorious, Israel's state has to return Sinai back to its people, to the Egyptians, in return for peace.
The fighting led Egypt and Israel to the negotiating table. The Camp David Accords of 1978 returned the Sinai to Egypt.
Then let's hear lie number 3 by Ben Shapiro.
Myth number 3. Israel expelled all Palestinian Arabs from British Mandate Palestine. Israel's founding documents asked Arabs to stay.
This is the most ridiculous lie you can hear because 1948 is considered in the Palestinian history the year of Nakba, when 700,000 Palestinians were expelled by force under the threat of guns to leave their houses. The evidences are humongous by videos, photos, documentaries. You cannot twist history. This is a very recent history, and yet still Ben Shapiro makes lies about it.
After the war, most Palestinian refugees and their descendants were not allowed to return to their homes, but had to live in Gaza, the West Bank, and neighboring Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon.
One of the many very obvious incidents that proves Ben Shapiro is lying is what happened in Deir Yassin, the Deir Yassin massacre. Deir Yassin is a village in Palestine that was invaded by the Israeli forces back then, and they killed every single person over there. Every single thing that breathed under the sun was killed. They wanted to send a message to the neighboring villages that if you do not leave your land, you will be killed. Exactly like what is happening now by Israeli forces against Palestinians who live in Gaza. They want to force them out of their land so they can annex their land.
The massacre in this village was one of many in a series of catastrophic events that became known as the Nakba, when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were violently displaced from their homeland in order to create the State of Israel. A set of brutal instructions called for the destruction of Arab villages by setting fire to, blowing up, and planting mines, especially those population centers which were difficult to control. In case of resistance, it called for the population to be expelled outside of the borders of the state, villages emptied, and for the occupation and control of Arab villages along main transportation arteries.
If all these evidences are not enough for Ben Shapiro, let's listen to the United Nations report about what happened in Deir Yassin.
But one UN report detailed circumstances of great savagery, including women and children stripped, lined up, photographed, and slaughtered.
Stories came out about women being raped, about babies being killed, and induced a great deal of fear among the Palestinian Arab population, many of them fleeing as a result.
The Zionist militias used it as a propaganda tool to tell people about it everywhere. The idea was that if you don't leave, we will do to you what happened in Deir Yassin.
Paramilitary groups cleared major cities, including Haifa and Jaffa, and took hundreds of smaller villages and towns too.
All these evidences show the massacres and baths of blood that Israel committed. The Nakba for Palestinian people was twofold. First, they were displaced from their houses. Second, they were denied the right to come back to their villages. When the Palestinian refugees had to flee the massacres, they locked their doors, kept the keys, hoping that after the war was over, they will be back to their villages. The Israeli state back then made sure that they will never come back to their homes, so they destroyed the villages, burned their houses down, burned their crops to keep them out of their lands.
Israel's founding documents asked Arabs to stay.
We didn't compel them to leave. They left on their own will, or rather on the will of Arab leaders who advised them even before trouble started.
After Ben Shapiro lied about Israel that it didn't want to expel Palestinians, Palestinians just left based on their volition, just left, overlooking and denying all these evidences of the Israeli atrocities to displace Palestinians and terrorize them to leave their lands. Now he lies again about the Palestinian refugees, claiming that the neighboring states refused to take the Palestinian refugees.
Arab nations refused to take in hundreds of thousands of Arabs, turning their co-religionists into refugees who have maintained that status for literally decades, a situation unparalleled in human history.
What a lie. In 1948, back then, the Palestinian population was 900,000. 700,000 of them were displaced by Israeli forces. 80% of Palestinians became refugees. 50% of them went to Jordan, 10% of them went to Lebanon, and 20% remain in Israel. 20% of them lived in Gaza and West Bank. Fast forward to today, we're talking about 14.3 million Palestinians live on earth now. 1.5 million of them live in Israel, and the rest are scattered around the world. 5 million of them are crammed in Gaza and West Bank. If you look at Jordan, for example, 70% of the Jordanian population are Palestinian, came from Palestinian origins. And you dare to say that they were not taken by the neighboring countries.
The collapse of Arab society during the 1947-48 war, leaving many Arabs without a means of support, has been well documented.
Israel will do everything in its power to help the resettlement of these refugees by paying compensation and by other means.
In case you don't know, this is David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister and Defense Minister of Israel. He claimed that the State of Israel back then tried to return Palestinians back to their land or compensate them. Obviously, nothing happened, as you all know. The evidences are everywhere.
That act of preventing their return compounded the Nakba. So the Nakba is both the forcible displacement of Palestinians from their homes and lands and country, as well as preventing them to return once the fighting was over.
Palestinian society was dismembered, crushed. More than half of the Palestinian people became refugees, stateless, dispossessed of their land.
Over time, the State of Israel covered up the physical evidence of an Arab Palestine.
Too many lies to unpack here, but let's listen to the most ridiculous and pathetic lie of all.
Myth number 4. Israel is an apartheid state. Israel is most certainly not an apartheid state. Arab citizens of Israel have the same rights as Jewish citizens.
Look how reprehensible this lie is. The entire world knows the apartheid system that Israel has against Palestinians. The evidences are overwhelming, but let me start with this. This is the website of the United Nations Amnesty International, and they have a report here that says Israel's apartheid against Palestinians, a look into decades of oppression and domination. They are investigating the truth, and they said this is apartheid. Amnesty International international news investigation shows that Israel imposes a system of oppression and domination against Palestinians across all areas under its control. But in case, Ben Shapiro, you don't know what is apartheid, this is the definition given by the United Nations. Apartheid can be best understood as a system of prolonged and cruel discriminatory treatment by one racial group of members of another under the intention to control the second racial group. But who cares about United Nations? Who cares about the international laws? Israel is above that. It's always above that. So let's go to what Israelis say here. We have the B'Tselem. It's the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights. It's in Israel. So they say here, a regime of Jewish supremacy from Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, this is apartheid. That's what B'Tselem says. The Israeli regime enacts in all territory its control Israel's sovereign territory, East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip, an apartheid regime. So they say it's not a vibrant democracy, this is apartheid. If these evidences are not enough, let's hear from Israeli soldiers, people on the ground who have experienced how they interacted with Palestinians.
I realized that my job is actually to maintain an apartheid system. Very early on, I understood that the rights that the Jewish settlers have are not the rights that the Palestinians have. I understood that I cannot touch a Jewish settler if he is attacking a Palestinian. I think realizing all of that in a very, very early stage in my service helped me understood that someone was lying to me.
Here you have it. The government is lying to its own people, its own soldiers. Let's hear from other soldiers too.
הבנתי שכאילו בשביל להיות שם אז צריך לשבור להם את הרוח, לשבור אותם. לשבור אותם זה אומר שיחכו ושיהיה להם בד על העיניים, שתייחסו להם לא יפה ושיכתבו מוות לערבים על השכפ"ץ.
Are these the only soldiers speaking about the apartheid regime? No. Let's hear from more.
And in breaking the silence, we are over 950 combat soldiers who say occupation, no. Yeah, that is wrong. This is not the path to go. Because at the heart of what you do, there is no way of seeing Palestinians as equal human beings to you.
The Israeli government officials don't even try to hide it anymore. They say it in front of the whole entire world. They say it. Palestinians are animals.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
There is no hope for Palestinians to have their own state. There is no hope for them to live with dignity and freedom. According to NPR, Netanyahu says Israel is nation state of the Jewish people and them alone. This is an apartheid state. Israel News says in 2022, Netanyahu says will begin annexing West Bank if he wins Israel election. So it is there. The intention and the plan is there, West Bank, but they started this time with Gaza, and then West Bank is coming. CNN says, Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu, no Palestinian state on my watch. And then listen to what they say about Palestine.
The only apartheid state is any state of Palestine. All of these myths have consequences. All of these lies have consequences.
Muslims and Palestinians are the ones who saved Jews in ancient history and in recent history. So in ancient history, when Roman Empire took over, they expelled Jews from the Holy Land. They were prohibited to lay a foot in the Holy Land for 6 centuries. Until Muslims take over, only then Jews were allowed to come back to the Holy Land. So when Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliphate, came and he opened the Holy Land, he made this peace accord with Jews, Christians, and Muslims, where he opened the Holy Land for all religions to come and practice their religion. Only then, after 600 years, Jews came back to the Holy Land. They were permitted to build their synagogues. Their rabbis and scholars came back to teach Torah, to chant, and do all the rituals in the Holy Land. In recent history, when most of the European countries expelled Jews, some countries expelled Jews more than once, like Germany 4 times, Crimea 2 times. There are many countries that expelled Jews once and twice and thrice. Ashkenazi Jews were about to perish because the other countries in the around the globe refused to receive Jews on their land. It's only for Ottoman Empire, Palestinians, Muslims, and Arabs who opened their arms for Jews. They welcomed them on the land. They opened their doors for them. They coexisted with them. So Palestinian country has been there for centuries, and it has never happened that Jews were killed under the Muslim, Arab, or Palestinian rule. Never. These massacres never happened to Jews under the rule of Muslims, Arabs, and Palestinians. And yes, Ben Shapiro, all these myths, all these lies have consequences. They will not go unnoticed. We will continue to refute the lies, to refute the misinformation. We will continue to uncover the truth. The whole world deserves to know the truth. The evidence are everywhere in history, in present, and even in the future. The evidence are everywhere. So it's only a matter of time until everybody knows the truth. This is our mission. We will continue to do that because this is our mission in life. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening.